Hello again. Welcome back to another book review. I've been doing quite a few of these this year, and today I'm going to be giving my fresh thoughts on the 1979 Stephen King novel, The Long Walk. Much like my review earlier this year of the Stephen King short story The Monkey, this is meant to be a tie-in with the soon-to-be-released adaptation of The Long Walk. And I'm not sure if it's going to be coming to my town, because we only have one cinema, but if it is, I'll definitely give it a watch and give my thoughts on it afterwards. But today, we're going to be looking at the original book, which is actually the second novel Stephen King wrote under his pseudonym, Richard Bachman. A name that he used to see if his novels could be successful without Stephen King attached to them. He wrote a couple of these, and last year I actually did a review of the very first Richard Bachman novel King ever wrote, the amazing and sadly out of print Rage, which I was able to read after getting my hands on this big-ass compilation novel, The Bachman Books. And The Long Walk actually is a part of this, but I got this primarily so I could read Rage, and it is a collectible, so for reading The Long Walk, I got a common paperback, which made it less stressful when it came to turning the not quite as fragile old pages. I just got done reading The Long Walk about 2 days ago, and it was quite a read, just went right by. Took me only about a week to read it, I just got into it that much. The plot, which takes place at an undisclosed time, could be present day or the future, is set in America that has become very dystopian and is ruled by a totalitarian military state. And the biggest event, spectacle for the whole country, is this thing called The Long Walk, where 100 boys, all of them teenagers, are chosen after various submissions to partake in a long, ongoing, and seemingly never-ending walk where each one of them has to keep up a pace of 4 miles an hour, and there is no finish line to this walk. The winner is whoever can stay on their feet the longest, who can keep going, and the one who stays up the longest, who hasn't collapsed from exhaustion, wins the prize, which is supposed to be whatever they want, desire for the rest of their lives, just granted like that.
That's easy!
And while that just may seem grueling, the dark twist is, if you fall under 4 miles an hour, you are given 1, 2, 3 warnings every hour, and then it can start over again. But if you fail to get up after 3 warnings in that 1 hour time period, you are killed.
This is more complicated than I thought.
And it soon becomes clear, many of these boys went into this not really grasping the seriousness of the situation or just what a toll this would take on them. And over the course of 5 fucking days, we see the number go from 100 to the final 3. And it becomes less a matter of who's gonna die, but rather when they will die.
There is no escape.
Right off the bat, it's an interesting plot, and when I first heard the synopsis, I wasn't exactly sure if it would be great, because something like this could become very silly very quickly, but once I read it, I was, again, able to really get into it, really be pulled in. And obviously, you gotta have a little suspension of disbelief. But if you go into this with, say, the suspensive mindset that you would have going into a fairy tale, I think you can go along with it. Think of this as a R-rated, blood-soaked fairy tale written by Stephen King. As somebody who really digs and gets into the work of John Carpenter, a man who doesn't dwell too hard on the overthinking details, I was able to really go along with this, and it was damn gripping to the point that I was just amazed. And before I go on, I just want to acknowledge, the premise is very similar to another Richard Bachman King novel, The Running Man, both being about games of death spectacles that the entire country has been suckered into watching. And the more I dwell on the plots of these two stories, the more I think, the Hunger Games people owe Stephen King some money.
Where are my fucking royalties?
An interesting backstory fact, while this wasn't the first Stephen King book to be published, it was the first full book that he apparently wrote. He started writing it back in 1966 or 67 when he was a college freshman, which could account for a lot of the teenage focus and, at times, juvenile dialogue, which there's nothing wrong with that. It feels pretty genuine to the mindset of boys of that age. The book does have some stuff that you'd expect of King, main one being, it takes place in fucking Maine. In fact, the main character is from Maine. But there's nothing wrong with that, and it plays well into the journey that the characters go on, because it's clear King definitely knows his state left and right, and can describe just about every road, wood, or fucking hill in the state's area. But like Rage, it differs from a lot of his more horror-based stories. I saw one article label this as a dystopian horror novel, which, yeah, there's some pretty disturbing shit here, but I'm not sure I'd label this as a horror story. It's definitely a suspense of disbelief story, but I feel it falls more into the thriller genre. It's like a real dark, gritty thriller. And as I usually do, I wrote down some pre-reading questions to answer after I finished it, and the first one, big one, being, does the writing style flow? And not surprisingly, yes. Stephen King, you gotta give it to him. He writes his books in a way where you can just skim your eyes right across the sentences and just not stop. Which was a huge relief after I spent a fucking month torturing myself reading L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth. King's writing has personality, usually taking the inner thoughts of a particular character. And like Rage, I just find it interesting to read his non-horror books. And while this is definitely not as in touch with reality as Rage was, it's definitely more about the horrors of humanity than anything supernatural. And it's not a book that has a simple theme to it. There are many themes here. The will to survive, looking for a meaning, a purpose, when there appears to be none, choosing death as an escape. A big theme of the book is the camaraderie that develops between the walkers. All of them are in it to win, but at the same time, they desire somebody to talk to and maybe even be a friend. And we see many relationships build up. Some break apart, many ups and downs, but there's a particular few who stick together to the very end. There's also some interesting side themes of homophobia and possible repressed homosexuality. For example, the main character refers to certain boys and some of their actions as queer, but then, and sometimes just in the next sentence, he'll say that he admires certain boys' beauty. And some of the shit-talking that the boys have with each other could almost be interpreted as flirting. One boy even hints that he might be gay. It's unclear if he's serious or just fucking with the other kid, but you never know. It can be very sudden too, like one second the character can be like, "Fuck you, fag!" And then the next he can be like, "He's so dreamy." It's not the main theme, but it is there and I like it. Before the book even begins, we get quotes from a variety of people, including Thomas Carlyle, President John F. Kennedy, and Bob Dylan. Kennedy's quote is about how more Americans should walk, saying, "Walking is fun." Wouldn't be a Stephen King book without a little sadism. Each chapter actually opens with a quote, most of them from game show hosts of the past, but we also get some non-game show host quotes, some of them from the most random of folks. Vince Lombardi, Jim Jones, and there's even a chapter that opens with a quote from the fucking Count of Sesame Street.
I got nothing.
These next two pre-read questions go hand in hand pretty well. Do I care about the characters, and is it suspenseful? And the answer is, Yes, on both parts very much. This book just jumps right into it. They do not explain what the Long Walk is right away. They just go right into the event, and whatever backstory there is about it or the characters is picked up along the journey. But right away, it's made clear just what is at stake and how serious the situation is, and that fear of death, that want to stay alive, is so real and relatable here. I found myself caring pretty much right out of the gate just who would live or die, even though I barely knew these characters. At first, the deaths of the walkers, the ones who fall under 4 miles, are shocking, and the descriptions are brutal. But over time, the gunshots become more frequent, sometimes behind the main characters, and they just learn to accept it and keep on moving. There are many moments where a walker goes immobile from exhaustion, and despite it being clear that they won't get up, they're still shot. And then there are some parts where the walkers decide they just don't want to do it anymore, and they willingly set themselves up to be shot, just seeing it as the ultimate way to end this. And as for the characters, obviously I can't go through all 100. In fact, the book doesn't give focus to all 100, but there are a primary few who get more focus than others, and the ones we get are very interesting and compelling characters. First off, there is no completely decent kid in this bunch. All these teenagers, as you would expect from a group of teenagers, are not the greatest of people, but you really see the humanity come through even in the worst ones. The main character, who's billed as number 47 of the 100, is Ray Garrity, who again is from Maine and kind of serves as the unfocused guide for the rest of the group. His home state gives him the nickname Maine's Own, a title that he at first embraces out of just ego, but as the walk goes on, he finds himself caring less and less because his main focus has since become to stay alive. And we're with him from the beginning, and right away he goes into it just wanting to get started, and it becomes clear he's not exactly sure why he went along with this, and he spends the majority of the book asking himself and others, why did I do this? Why did I not see just how serious this was? Like he was blinded by the idea of winning the prize. We find out that his father has been dead for a long time. He was apparently hauled off by the government and put into something called squatting. It's unclear exactly what it is, but it sounds pretty much like a death sentence. And he was put there for voicing his political opinions that didn't align with the government's. He has a girlfriend named Jan, and the main thing that's keeping him from dropping is the prospect of seeing her if they can make it to his hometown. And as for his faults, he can be a bit of a creepy perv. He admits he's a virgin and is easily distracted by pretty girls, and the slightest hint of seeing some skin, no matter how minuscule, is enough to almost throw him off balance. He even admits that he feels like he's becoming a sex maniac. At one point, he even runs up and kisses a female spectator, seemingly forgetting that he has a girlfriend. He wishes death on a few other of the walkers, and while they may be deserving of those bad wishes, he almost immediately finds himself regretting it. Maybe it's involuntary empathy. And for his earlier pervy moments, he finds himself feeling guilty the more he realizes he genuinely does love Jan. He loses his strength at times, and at others, it looks like his sanity might be starting to slip, and that's another thing. This book does an amazing job of showing the pain and exhaustion that comes from constant walking and having to keep yourself focused to keep walking, as well as the horrid feeling of having to keep going when you've had absolutely no sleep. Garrity's closest compadre is a boy named Pete McVriars, number 61. McVriars is one of the more strong-willed walkers, but even he has his breaking point. But he keeps at it the most, and he and Garrity really become something of a two-person unit, looking out for each other, even though McVriars admits it's probably against his better judgment. He's got a little bit of mystery to him, including a pretty big facial scar, which we later find out was given to him by an an ex-girlfriend. He says she was mentally ill. He was jealous and insecure of her being more successful at her job than he was. They broke up and had a huge fight. He claims that she thought he was trying to rape her, which it's unclear if he's telling the truth about her mental state or maybe he's in denial and he actually did try to rape her, but it's left uncertain. But despite the ambiguity as to whether or not he was a good person before the walk, he shows himself to be a true friend, constantly saving Garrity, even though he says on 1 or 2 occasions he won't do it again. He keeps going in and looks out for him. And maybe it's just that he constantly goes in to help him despite it being against his own journey to win, but McVeers is honestly my favorite character of the book. I really enjoyed reading about this character. Yes, he's not perfect, but no one here is. But he really showed a lot of strength in character as things got real ugly at the end. It's hard to find an antagonist in a book like this, aside from the rarely seen military, but if there is, it would be Gary Barkovich. Number 5. Throughout the whole book, he does nothing but spew vile, unpleasant shit at the other walkers, trying to get under their skin, and at one point even goads one guy into getting shot, earning him the hatred of the other characters. In one chapter, when a black kid falls down and gets shot, he refers to him as a dumb nigger. And when the other boys calls him out on it, he calls him a cracker. I guess he's an equal opportunity racist. But even he's given a brief moment where we see his ugly exterior begin to crack, and he breaks down, proclaiming that he's not a bad person, that he desires friends, and tries to make excuses for the horrible shit he's been doing this whole time. Garrity puts it best in that it doesn't make you like him, but in a way, it's hard not to pity him. And he makes a point of note saying that Barkovich's brief moment of humanity kind of scares him. Speaking of humanity, we have Art Baker, number 3. He's a friendly enough kid. He gets close to Garrity and McVeers, and kind of becomes their unofficial number 3. He's one of the more pleasant characters in the book, but we find out he's got a pretty dark backstory. He used to run with a bad crowd, did a lot of horrible things, including burning a cross on a black man's lawn. But despite the awfulness of that, it's clear he feels immense guilt, and it's unclear what he wants, but he gives off the vibe of looking for something better, something more than what he used to be. Hank Olson, number 70. He's a kid who starts out kind of likable, but he becomes very haggard down as the book goes on and develops a pretty asshole-ish personality, turning into a real cunt at some points. There are many moments where it seems like he's going to be one of the first to go down, but surprisingly, he keeps on going, albeit turning into a non-verbal zombie. And he has a real emotional moment where he says to Garrity, Jesus will save him. I guess King was in a pro-God mood when he wrote this book. And the last of the real sympathetic characters who's worth noting is Scram, number 87. He's a strong boy from Arizona who was actually the projected winner of the long walk when bets were being made. And his character is probably the most surprising of the bunch. He's fucking married. Yeah, he apparently got married at 15, and his wife, who's a year older than him, is back home all pregnant. And despite dropping out of high school, he's adamant that his kid will go to college.
Word? Word. I don't know about that.
But despite his apparent strength and invincible attitude, he catches pneumonia, and it becomes clear he's not gonna last long. And the very last walker to mention is Stebbins, number 88. Next to Barkovich, Stebbins is the closest thing to an antagonist of this main group, but he never does anything outright villainous. He talks a little shit here and there, but never even close to Barkovich. What makes Stebbins stick out is he is mysterious as shit. Despite looking like he couldn't go very far, he actually keeps up with the rest of them to the near end. He's got a sadistic smugness about him, constantly proclaiming that he will be the one that wins. He drops a lot of knowledge about the walk that no one else knew, and his ability to keep going with everyone else almost doesn't seem human. You find yourself constantly asking, what's up with him? And before I get into the ending, which can always go one way or the other with Stephen King, I just want to say, this was genuinely one of the most gripping and toe-tapping books I've ever read. I just couldn't stop once I started, and it never dragged, it never bored me. I was all with it, and I was both excited but nervous to get to the end. And just for the sake of fairness, as I do, before we get to the spoiler section, I'm going to list my cons. Now, once again, King is very colorful and creative with his writing, often has a crudeness, but very real and raw feel to it. And given how close he was to the age of the characters when he started writing this, it definitely feels very genuine when going inside the mind of a teenage boy, which can be easily distracted and is more often than not obsessed with sex. And there's nothing overtly wrong with that, but sometimes the sex talk and the descriptions can become a little much. Garrity describes wanting to marry his mom as a little boy, which, okay, weird, but not the worst statement. And how by accident she was the first woman he ever saw naked, particularly highlighting her bush.
Excuse me, what was that?
And going back to the themes of repressed homosexuality, he talks about playing doctor with a boy when they were both 5 and both of them getting erections. Thanks, King, for putting those images in my head. I mean, it's not a group of 12-year-olds having an orgy in the sewer, but still, what the fuck? There's also a scene where one walker runs up to a female spectator and makes out with her, gropes her breast, and has to fall back before the soldiers shoot him, and he finds himself overcome with the pain of blue balls, which is enough to make him collapse and get shot dead. So yeah, this dumb, horny kid was killed by blue balls. I can't tell if that's extremely retarded or extremely hilarious. And there's also many moments where King realistically shows what would happen to a bunch of people walking that long with no breaks. Eventually you have to piss, and eventually your bowels crack and you have to let it all out. So what do? The walkers turn around, walk backwards, and piss. And they have to go number 2. All they can do is drop their pants, squat, and pray that it comes out quick. Now, to King's credit, he does write these in a way that really show the pain and humiliation that comes with this, but also the desperation in that they can't help it and they hope it gets over fast. There's one part where Garrity has to take a dump, and apparently the thought of doing it in front of the spectators is worse than the fear of getting shot. And the writing makes these scenes intense and have a sense of humanity, but I'm really not sure if they can pull these scenes off in film format without the inner monologue and not have it look really dumb. But now, onto the spoilers, and particularly the ending. The Olsen character, despite having a lot of faults near the end, goes out in probably the most horrific way of all the main characters. He runs up to the soldiers monitoring the walk, snags away one of their guns, and then gets shot in the stomach. And instead of just shooting him in the head and ending it all, the soldiers allow him to continue walking with his guts hanging out. It is the most intense and disturbing death of the book, and I really, despite his ugly moments, found myself feeling sad. Barkovich, who I have no sympathy for, does die, but he has probably the craziest death. After outliving many other walkers, he just snaps and rips out his own goddamn throat, and they only shoot him when he goes down from loss of blood.
Holy fuck.
Scram, the guy with pneumonia, is clearly not going to make it, and the other walkers all agree to help take care of his wife should he go down. He's genuinely touched and offers a heartfelt goodbye, which they all return. He goes off with another walker, sits on the side of the road, and the two of them die together in calmness. Baker, before accepting he can't go on much longer, tells Garrity he was a real friend and asks him not to look as it happens. This leaves it down to only 3 people: Stebbins, McVries, and Garrity. And it's here at the end that we finally find out what is the deal with Stebbins' unhuman willpower. The walk is orchestrated by a mysterious authority figure known as the Major. Stebbins is the Major's son. It appears that there's no real love between them, and he's been raised more or less, as he puts it, to be a mechanical rabbit that the other dogs chase and are never able to catch. It's honestly a pretty good twist, and I did not see it coming. I never would have guessed that. McVries sadly reaches his end and goes to calmly sit down and just let it happen. Despite all the walkers promising earlier not to help each other as they approach the end, Garrity tries to pick him up, but it's clear McVries wants to go. It was legitimately heartbreaking to read. Sooner than later, Garrity decides he's at his point of accepting death, so he goes up to tap Stebbins to tell him the prize is his. And it's at that moment that Stebbins collapses, just completely keels over. Oh, cruel fucking irony. Garrity is declared the winner, but due to his body being in so much pain from the walk and lack of sleep, he barely acknowledges the celebration. He spots a mysterious dark figure in the distance, and per the last sentence, he finds the ability to run again. That's it. That's the end of the fucking book. It just fucking ends there. There's no follow-up. There's no closure to what's happened to him, what's going to happen with his family, his girlfriend. There's no real scene of the Major and him talking. It just ends right there, and I don't know what to make of this ending. It's not necessarily that the last few pages are bad, it's just that it ends so fucking abruptly. Is the dark figure death? Is it a figment of his imagination? Did he finally go insane from lack of sleep? I don't know! For a book that was so suspenseful and kept your interest for every fucking sentence, this is probably the most anticlimactic ending you could do! This ending is so abrupt, you'd swear the Monty Pythons wrote it. So yes, this can be added to the list of examples as to why Stephen King sucks at endings. And again, it's not technically bad, but with a story like this, an ending with closure really feels like it would have fit. I mean, The Stand gets an extended ending years later, but not The Long Walk?
Shit.
And that's my review for The Long Walk, novel by Stephen King / Richard Bachman. Despite my feelings on the ending, I do think this is an incredible book. I could not recommend it enough. I know this book's been out for over 45 fucking years and has been loved by many readers ever since, but there's a lot of people who sadly have not gone into the world of King, and I think this is a good piece of his work to get into. It's a lot easier to find than Rage, and I'm amazed it took this long to get this book made. Apparently an adaptation has been in the talks since the late 80s, and at one point they even had George A. Romero in talks to make it. I have no idea if the movie is going to be good or not, and again, I'm not sure if he'll even come to my town, but if it does, I will definitely check it out, and hopefully it's a lot more engaging for me than The Monkey. I know a lot of people love that film, but that was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had in the theater, so here's hoping, because you'd have to be deliberately trying to fuck this up to not make it work. Although, if they change the ending, I won't object.